For decades, China's military planners have run the same invasion simulation: overwhelming naval forces crossing the 110-mile Taiwan Strait, establishing beachheads under air superiority, then rolling into Taipei with superior numbers. The math was simple: 2 million Chinese troops versus Taiwan's 170,000. Victory seemed inevitable. More recent estimates by US intelligence suggest that China would actually make an offensive move somewhere by 2027, with a grimmer outlook indicating an attack in 2025 itself. But Taiwan just threw out the entire playbook. Taiwan's revolutionary strategy threatens to turn any invasion into a bloodbath that even China's military might cannot survive. It's the Porcupine strategy, and Taiwan is betting everything on it becoming too painful for China to swallow. According to military analysts and recent strategic documents, Taiwan is fundamentally reimagining its defense doctrine. Gone are the days of trying to match China plane for plane, ship for ship. Instead, they're covering the island with mobile missiles, sea mines, and drone swarms that would exact a devastating toll on any invading force. This isn't just another military modernization program, it's a complete philosophical shift that's forcing China to reconsider whether conquering Taiwan is worth the catastrophic losses they'd suffer in the attempt. The transformation began with a stark realization: Taiwan's traditional military approach was doomed from the start, as it could never win a conventional war. The numbers paint a sobering picture. As mentioned, China's People's Liberation Army boasts over 2 million active personnel, making it the largest active troop size in the world, compared to Taiwan's 170,000. The PLA Navy operates 370 vessels, including 3 aircraft carriers. Taiwan has fewer than 100 ships and no carriers. China fields over 3,000 combat aircraft, while Taiwan maintains roughly 760 aircraft, with China maintaining a fighter jet fleet 4 times that of Taiwan, which is also relatively newer. In any symmetrical conflict, Taiwan will be guaranteed a swift defeat. Taiwan's leadership knew this, yet for decades clung to prestige weapon systems. Advanced fighters, main battle tanks, large warships. Military culture valued these platforms as symbols of legitimate defense forces, even as the cross-strait military balance tilted inexorably toward Beijing. The wake-up call likely came from unexpected teachers: Ukraine and conflicts in the Middle East. Military observers watched as cheap Iranian drones terrorized billion-dollar air defense systems. They witnessed Ukrainian soldiers using portable missiles to destroy Russian armor at a fraction of the cost. Most tellingly, they saw how mobile, distributed defenses could frustrate and possibly even repel overwhelming attacking forces. All of these were likely the reasons why Taiwan leaned into its new doctrine: if you can't match their strength, multiply their pain. Which leads us to the Porcupine defense that has Chinese strategists reassessing their invasion plans. The concept is deceptively simple: cover Taiwan with thousands of relatively cheap yet potentially lethal defensive weapons that make every meter of conquered territory prohibitively expensive. These weapons may not win offensive victories, but they guarantee that any attacker leaves the encounter wounded and shaken, with severe casualties and crushed morale. The strategy used by this type of defense hinges on inherent inequality in the economics of the war effort on either side. Let's consider a relatively simplified economic exchange. A Chinese Type 055 destroyer costs approximately $890 million to build. Taiwan's Swingfen 3 anti-ship missile costs around $3.5 million each. If Taiwan launches 3 missiles to sink 1 destroyer, it trades $10.5 million for $888 million in Chinese losses, an approximate 85-to-1 exchange ratio. Even if the odds are much worse, Taiwan still gets ahead in terms of funneling money into the war effort. This calculation extends across all domains. Land-based anti-air missiles costing hundreds of thousands can down fighter jets worth tens of millions. Portable anti-tank weapons worth thousands can destroy tanks costing millions. Smart sea mines, priced in the tens of thousands, can sink amphibious assault ships worth hundreds of millions. The strategy deliberately inverts traditional military thinking. Instead of seeking battlefield dominance, Taiwan aims for maximum enemy attrition. Victory isn't defined as defeating the invasion, it's making the invasion so costly that rational actors wouldn't attempt it. There are 2 parts of this strategy. The first lies in establishing supply lines to get cheap defensive weapons and stocking up on them to use as the first line of defense. The second line of defense is updating aging equipment to outmatch their Chinese counterparts. Ultimately, both approaches focus on developing Taiwan's domestic weapons production or extending its rates of procurement from allies like the US. For the first type of warfare, several vital systems need to work together if they are to mount a sufficient defense against a potentially overwhelming invasion. Drones are the prime example here. Somewhat unfortunately, actual statistics about drone warfare can be a bit muddled due to the ambiguity in what a drone actually is and what it's used for. For example, reports from late 2023 and early 2024 indicated that Taiwan had decided to build over 3,200 drones in 2024 alone. The supposed national drone team includes drones in 5 different categories, presumably similar to what we're seeing being used in Ukraine every day over the past few years. The statement from the Foreign Military Studies Office supported this with an overview that Taiwan would build UAVs ranging in design from mini drones under 2 kilograms to large reconnaissance aircraft with a cruising range of more than 150 kilometers. And yet those numbers seem awfully low because they are. Ukraine is estimated to be using more than 10,000 drones per month. This is largely because most of the drones being lost are relatively cheap first-person view drones that have been modified to carry larger batteries and a rudimentary ordnance, like a tank mine or grenade that self-destructs the drone upon detonation. Couple that with the fact that anti-drone tactics have proliferated on both sides of the conflict in Ukraine, and drones have a relatively low hit rate, with many being lost before they make it across the front. On the other side of the spectrum are sophisticated drones like the US-made General Atomics MQ-9 Reaper. The Reaper, in particular, a multi-million-dollar investment into a long-range surveillance drone that doubles as a launch and attack platform all by itself. The US announced a $345 million military aid package to Taiwan, which includes 4 MQ-9A drones and associated support. More recently, though, Taiwan has further pushed the agenda of promoting drone operations and construction. The goal for domestic production has moved to over 3,400 drones total by 2028, while the country hopes to acquire nearly 1,000 missile-type long-range drones by 2026. Additionally, Taiwan's government has set a new goal for multiplying the monthly drone production to over 15,000 small drones per month by 2028. But compare this with the current production in Ukraine, which is estimated to be around 150,000 per month, and Taiwan would still be falling short of arming itself against an army that is both numerically and likely technologically superior to Russia. This means that Taiwan has to rely on a few other platforms. Luckily, Taiwan hasn't slacked when it comes to updating its tactical strike or defense capabilities. The Swing-Feng, aka Brave Wind, missile family represents Taiwan's crown jewel in domestic weapons development. The Swing-Feng 3 HF-3 is a supersonic anti-ship missile developed by Taiwan, capable of reaching speeds up to Mach 3.5. Its operational range varies between 120 and 150 kilometers, with extended range variants reportedly reaching up to 400 kilometers. The missile employs a high-altitude cruise trajectory and executes evasive maneuvers during its terminal phase, including sea-skimming and high-G lateral movements to evade enemy defenses and reduce interception probability. The newest land attack offshoot of the family, Swing-Sheng, an extended-range variant of the Swing-Feng 2E, has a reported range of up to 1,200 kilometers, enabling strikes deep into mainland China. The Tian-Chien, or Sky Sword, series is another way for Taiwan to defend itself, albeit in a more symmetric fashion. The Sky Sword 2 serves as a medium-range air-to-air missile comparable to the American AMRAAM, while the Sky Sword 3 provides extended range for area defense. The land-based Tian-Kung 3 system creates overlapping coverage zones around key installations, with radars that can track multiple targets simultaneously. Imagine these systems as layers of an onion, each protecting at different altitudes and ranges. At the same time, the Wanqian, or 10,000 swords, air-launched cruise missile demonstrates sophisticated cluster munition capability. Deployed from Taiwan's F-16s and indigenous defense fighters, these weapons can saturate vital targets like airfields and ports with submunitions. The psychological impact would match the physical. All commanders know that a handful of aircraft can effectively shut down an entire airbase, significantly delaying operations and causing widespread infrastructural damage. The Yunfeng, or Cloud Peak supersonic cruise missile, pushes Taiwan's strike capabilities even further. With reported ranges exceeding 1,000 miles, these ground-launched weapons could theoretically reach Beijing. While Taiwan maintains strategic ambiguity about targeting policies, the mere existence of such capabilities complicates Chinese military planning. If China were to stage a conventional attack on Taiwan, it could potentially retaliate in an all-out launch on Beijing itself. This threat simultaneously constitutes a part of Taiwan's deterrence strategy. Then there is the passive defense system, sea mine. Mines are relatively inexpensive, and yet a single mine can obliterate a transport ship moving infantry from mainland China to Taiwan. one of the former's major numerical advantages in a theoretical invasion. Even better for Taiwan, the geography of the East China Sea and the Taiwan Strait makes the area particularly conducive for mine warfare. With a rocky seabed and plenty of shifting currents, Taiwan can easily plant mines that would be difficult to detect and remove by the invading force. During that time, the country's defensive systems could pelt the mine removers with missiles. Of course, for all the potential good they do, mines do come with one large disadvantage. They can't discriminate between friendly and hostile ships. As such, Taiwan can only realistically lay down sea mines when the Chinese invasion is imminent. Otherwise, the minefield would preclude merchant ships from going to and from Taiwanese ports, which constitute a large part of the country's economy. The other option is to partially lay down mines and leave a few channels open for trade. However, given the scale of Chinese-flagged ships using Taiwanese ports, it's likely that they would inevitably forward the location of these safe routes to the Chinese military. Which brings about another potential issue. Taiwan doesn't have enough mine-laying ships to act fast. The country only has 4 mine layers and is expecting another 6 within the next several years, likely later than China's supposed invasion. Taiwan needs to defend at least 5 major and a few minor ports, with mine layers, warships, and possibly even civilian ships laying mines, while being directly threatened with Chinese long-range strike capabilities and an incoming navy. This is why the aforementioned long-range missiles can give Taiwan enough leverage to preclude an attack from happening in the first place. They could give the country enough time to mount more effective defenses or await support from international partners including the United States, Japan, and Australia. Taiwan's second line of defense lies in its foreign procurements, particularly of US-made weapon systems. The F-16V Block 70 represents Taiwan's most significant Air Force modernization. Unlike older F-16s, the V variant features an active electronically scanned array or AESA radar that can track multiple targets while remaining difficult to detect. The APG-83 radar provides capabilities approaching 5th-generation fighters at 4th-generation prices and training requirements. Taiwan's 66 new F-16Vs should arrive by 2026, combined with 141 older models being upgraded to the same standard, create a formidable defensive fighter force. With not a lot of airspace to cover, these F-16s could launch hit-and-run attacks via long-range missiles, both those made in Taiwan or obtained abroad. Supporting them are Patriot missile batteries, which provide high-altitude air defense against ballistic missiles and aircraft. The PAC-3 variant emphasizes hit-to-kill technology, essentially ramming incoming missiles rather than exploding near them. This kinetic kill approach is particularly effective against ballistic warheads that might otherwise survive proximity explosions. Taiwan operates 9 Patriot batteries, strategically positioned to defend major population centers and military installations, with hundreds of PAC-3 compatible missiles being sold yearly by the US. The entire PAC-3 project is valued at $5.6 billion and should be complete by 2027. The HIMARS rocket artillery system adds another layer of precision deep strike capability, this time with fire-and-forget mobility. Each truck-mounted launcher can fire 6 guided rockets to ranges exceeding 50 miles, then relocate before counter-battery fire arrives. When armed with ATACMS, tactical ballistic missiles, this range goes close to 200 miles, enough to reach across the Taiwan Strait. Naval acquisitions include the Oliver Hazard Perry-class frigates, transferred from US Navy surplus but upgraded with modern sensors and weapons. While these vessels lack the stealth of modern warships, their proven seaworthiness and spacious hulls accommodate Taiwanese modifications like additional anti-ship missiles. The Apache AH-64E attack helicopters would then provide close air support with Hellfire missiles and chain gun armament. The E variant's longbow radar can detect and classify targets beyond visual range, particularly valuable in Taiwan's often cloudy weather. The helicopters are a much-needed addition, as the country doesn't have an air force that could compete with China's. But out of all US equipment, anti-tank weapons would likely form a crucial component of asymmetric short-range defense. Weapons like Javelin missiles allow individual soldiers to destroy main battle tanks from 1.5 miles away. The fire-and-forget guidance means operators can launch and immediately seek cover. Taiwan already has 1,200 of these missiles and is likely going to pursue obtaining more, as China will need to deploy its mechanized infantry on the island itself if it wants to fully invade and conquer. TOW, tube-launched, optically tracked, wire-guided missiles provide similar capability from fixed positions or vehicles. Another promising asymmetric weapon system is the NASAMS, or National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile System. NASAMS combines advanced radar technology and high-precision missiles to engage targets ranging from aircraft to cruise missiles. However, it's also shown a possible use case in combating smaller targets like drones, which are undoubtedly going to be a major part of any conflict moving forward. The system's ability to easily integrate different types of radars and launch platform makes it particularly well suited to defense environments that need to rapidly adapt to the enemy, as is the case with Taiwan. Due to Taiwan's relatively small land area, a few NASAMS batteries would be sufficient to create a bubble around the largest population centers. The US has approved a sale of 3 batteries to Taiwan in October 2024 with an unspecified delivery date, but the first battery should reach the island in 2025. Other acquisitions include hundreds of Harpoon anti-ship missiles, both air and ground-launched variants, with a range of 100 miles, shoulder-fired Stinger anti-aircraft missiles able to take out a helicopter in a single shot, forcing China to use mid- and long-range strategies. P-3C patrol aircraft, which would provide surveillance far out from the Taiwanese coast and possibly detect one of China's 50 submarines. But you might be thinking that some of these investments are not worth pursuing. After all, what good are F-16Vs when China has a larger air force and its jets are supposedly more modern? The answer here lies in quality over quantity. While China has unveiled several weapon systems that should theoretically match Western counterparts, more thorough analyses don't support that claim. China's J-20 Mighty Dragon represents its first operational stealth fighter and was deployed in the 21st century, decades after the US stealth fighter program began. This twin-engine aircraft combines long range with internal weapons bays that should preserve its low radar cross-section. However, questions persist about its engines. China still struggles to produce power plants matching American F119 or F135 turbofans. The J-20's stealth characteristics also likely fall short of the F-22 or F-35's radar-evading capabilities. American pilots training against simulated J-20 threats report that modern AESA radars can detect them at longer ranges than Chinese specifications suggest. The Mighty Dragon might even have worse stealth tech than older US planes. The more apt comparison would be the J-16, the Chinese multi-role fighter. Based on the Russian Su-30, this aircraft carries impressive weapons loads and features domestically produced electronics. Yet its large radar cross-section makes it vulnerable to modern air defenses. Taiwan's upgraded F-16Vs, despite being older designs, carry equally capable radars and missiles while being smaller targets. Then there's the Chinese Navy. The Type 055 destroyer carries 112 vertical launch cells for missiles with size and sensors rivaling American Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. However, Chinese naval tradition lacks the decades-long experience of open ocean operations that the US Navy has accumulated. Complex damage control procedures refined through generations of American sailors can't be learned from manuals alone. China has only grown into its navy, while the US has been projecting naval power since World War II. For an invasion, the Type 075 amphibious assault ship would likely be invaluable to the Chinese effort, at 40,000 tons displacement. These vessels approach the size of American Wasp-class ships, and yet amphibious operations require intricate coordination between air, sea, and ground forces. Chinese forces have practically no experience with landing on foreign soil and can only simulate them, while Taiwan's defenses would operate on familiar ground. Another potential Chinese ace would be its aircraft carrier. With the 4th carrier commissioned, the Chinese Navy could leverage its larger aircraft fleet to operate closer to Taiwan and consistently pressure the small island. But none of its active carriers are nuclear-powered, requiring constant refueling and preventing them from going out into the Pacific Ocean for long. In a potential invasion, this isn't such a downside, as they will be close to home ports and won't need to stage long hauls to spend fuel. The most recent carrier, Type 003, has also reportedly had issues with its electronic launch system, making it less reliable than those used by the US on its 11 carriers. Older models would likely have systems that are even more behind contemporary tech and upgrades that the US has made. China also likely has a less developed electronic warfare suite compared to the US. Even if it can start overwhelming Taiwan's electronic warfare defenses, it's unclear if it can do so in time before Taiwan's allies interfere. All of those point to China's military equipment being unfavorably matched one-to-one against Western equivalents. Even if China ends up making more of this equipment, Taiwan's investments in asymmetric warfare would make it a difficult nut to crack before its more advanced, experienced, and even numerous reinforcements come from the US and the rest of the Western world. Of course, there's the matter of whether or when China will bite the bullet and start the invasion. Recent events surrounding the war in Ukraine and the sudden changes in US administration caused by the shift between President Joe Biden's and President Donald Trump's policies have put the entire world on edge. Trump has seemingly started to back out of supporting the rest of NATO, with Europe needing to pick up the slack in bolstering its national defense systems and reaffirming its support for Ukraine. Even more importantly, the US maintains its ambiguous stance on China-Taiwan relations, not committing to any single action for or against either party in any potential military conflict. When Trump was asked about the matter during the 2024 elections, he avoided answering the question directly, stating that he will be required to negotiate and find a diplomatic solution. Considering that the US has recently pulled out of Russia-Ukraine peace talks at the start of May, after Trump repeatedly suggested that he could end the war in a few days peacefully, it's unclear how willing the Trump administration would be to directly support Taiwan. This is further complicated by the US administration opting to support domestic industry. Taiwan is one of the world's largest exporters of conductors and related products, with a large chunk of its exports going to the US. If the US supplants that with domestic manufacturing, it could very well cut its losses and abstain from defending Taiwan due to a lack of benefits of doing so. Then there's the question of how China will react to Taiwan's doctrine change amidst shifting geopolitical implications. If Taiwan manages to obtain enough asymmetrical warfare systems within the next few years, it can create a sufficient deterrent against an invasion. In the best-case scenario, allied countries like Australia, Japan, or the US could give Taiwan just enough physical weapons to create an illusion of Porcupine defense that will work in the short term while supporting the island with defense agreements. Of course, the last part also hinges on the effectiveness of US and China force projections in the region, which have started to ebb and flow over the years. If China maintains the current rate of military innovation, it could catch up to the US in a few vital areas. We've already seen some of that progress. In 2020, China started testing a hypersonic orbital missile, capable of circling the Earth and dropping down practically invisibly. This would make long-range strikes much more difficult to detect and prepare against, and China could use them to jumpstart the invasion by taking out vital pieces of Taiwan's defensive system. But what do you think? Can Taiwan's Porcupine strategy create enough uncertainty in Beijing to prevent an invasion? Or will China's military might ultimately overwhelm any defensive preparations? Thanks for watching, and leave your comments below.